Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. "Sir, may I wake your dead daughter?" whispers a homeless woman. The sky was a leaden gray, as if it itself wanted to cry. A fine, almost invisible rain fell silently, depositing icy pearls on the tombstones. Green Hill Cemetery seemed frozen in time, enveloped in a veil of sadness and contemplation. No wind blew, no sound disturbed the heavy atmosphere. Only, in the distance, the hoarse cry of a crow rent the air, adding to the melancholy that funereal breath that accompanies farewells. At the edge of a freshly dug grave, Richard Holloway stood motionless. His gaze, blank and lost, stared at the ground before him. His clenched hand clumsily held a bouquet of white lilies, a desperate attempt to bring some purity to this moment of darkness. He wore a crisp black suit, the austere reflection of a businessman accustomed to controlling his world. But now, faced with this absence, even his armor seemed to crack. At his feet lay a small white coffin, delicately adorned with engraved motifs. It was that of Emily, his only daughter. 6 years of life, of smiles, of suspended dreams. 6 years that had evaporated in a breath, cut down by a merciless leukemia. Less than a year had been enough for the disease to consume her, while he, despite his colossal fortune, had been powerless. The guests, one by one, murmured in low voices, casting looks heavy with compassion, but from a safe distance. All knew that nothing they could say could fill that immense emptiness. All knew that money could not buy the return of a lost child. And no one dared to cross that invisible barrier of pain surrounding Richard. The tycoon's lips remained sealed, his eyes still staring at that small coffin. Not a tear fell, not a sob escaped. It was as if his heart, too broken, had decided to fall silent. Then, in this sacred, fragile, and almost unreal silence, a voice rose. A frail, hesitant voice, like a breath carried by the wind. A voice from elsewhere. "Sir, may I wake your dead daughter?" All eyes turned to the source of this question, suspended in the air like an incantation. A few meters away, standing on the damp earth, a young girl stood tall despite her rags. Her dirty, oversized clothes hung loosely on her thin body, a testament to a difficult, wandering life. Her matted hair fell in disordered strands around her face, marked by dust and fatigue. Her bare feet sank into the mud that covered the path, seemingly unaware. His gaze, however, shone with an intense, almost supernatural light. A gentle but fierce determination, like that of those who have known pain but refuse to be confined by it. Her name was Hope. Outrage rose in explosive waves among the guests, abruptly shattering the solemnity of the ceremony. Murmurs became sharp whispers, then high, sharp voices, like so many sharpened blades. "Get her out of here," cried a woman in a suit, her face reddened with emotion and suppressed anger. "She's crazy." "An imposter," said a man, nervously adjusting his tie, his gaze suspicious and hard. "How dare she come and disturb the morning? We don't let vagrants in here. This is disrespectful to Emily and her family." The rumbling murmurs turned into a growing hubbub. Several turned to the bodyguards, ready to intervene, as if to chase away this unexpected stranger. One could feel the collective anger boiling, threatening. But amidst this storm of judgment, a hand slowly rose, placed authoritatively on the arm of one of the relatives who was about to order Hope to leave. Everyone froze instantly. It was Richard Holloway. For the first time in days, since pain had sealed his lips and blinded his eyes lit up. He was no longer the closed, impenetrable tycoon. He was a devastated father, but one awakened by a spark of hope, however small. In a deep, muffled voice, almost choked with emotion, he asked, Repeat what you just said." A heavy silence fell over the cemetery. No one dared to speak anymore. All eyes focused on the young girl, a frail silhouette amidst the dark costumes. Hope met the billionaire's gaze and, without trembling, replied in a soft but firm voice, full of overwhelming sincerity. "I know this is insane, sir." She took a deep breath, as if gathering all her courage. "But sometimes we have to listen to what goes beyond reason. What cannot be explained, what pain and fear prevent us from seeing." She paused, looking around, trying to touch every soul present. I'm neither a doctor nor a priestess. I don't hold miracles or magic. I'm just someone who speaks to those no one listens to anymore. Those who are gone, but whose voice never truly fades. I can only try. For her. And for you." A gasp rippled through the crowd. The indignation had faded, replaced by astonishment mixed with respect. Something indefinable hung in the air. A fragile but palpable energy. Richard, troubled and misty-eyed, didn't answer. Nor did he have her expelled. He felt that, in this suspended moment, this young girl perhaps embodied the only chance to hear what he had no longer dared to listen to, Emily's voice. The days following the cemetery incident were a media whirlwind. News channels vied for images of the white coffin and the impassive billionaire, contrasting with the young woman with torn clothes and a penetrating gaze. The headlines were flashed in capital letters on every screen and newspaper. Homeless woman claims she can wake up billionaire's daughter. Richard Holloway losing his mind in his grief. Miracle or imposture? The strange story of Hope, the street girl. Social media was ablaze with heated debate. Some mocked, others accused, and a few rare voices expressed a mixture of hope and disbelief. But the media turmoil left little room for the truth, which was often distorted by rumor and sensationalism. Yet, far from the spotlight, in the silence of his luxurious home, Richard Holloway never stopped thinking about Hope. Her face, her gaze, that voice that had dared to break the silence of grief. He wanted to know, to understand. He had to understand. He then launched a discreet investigation, away from cameras and journalists. He asked his assistants to uncover the mysterious young girl's past. What they discovered changed everything. Hope wasn't a charlatan, nor a liar seeking to profit from a man's pain. She was born in a poor neighborhood, abandoned almost from infancy. Her mother, a devoted nurse, had been forgotten, the victim of an overdose when Hope was only 10 years old. Since then, the street had become her home, her only companions the stars and the cold of the urban nights. Hope survived by singing in subway stations, her crystal-clear voice contrasting with the gray city. She read the names on the headstones in the cemeteries she passed, murmuring prayers for the lonely souls. She spoke to the dead, she said, not to disturb, but to feel less alone in a world that had forgotten her. But more than that, she spent her nights in a disused hospice, abandoned to brambles and silence. According to neighbors, the place was haunted, populated by the spirits of dying children. Some claimed to have seen Hope speaking to these invisible presences, as if she had a mysterious connection with them. Intrigued and shaken, Richard made a decision he never would have imagined. He went to see her himself. But he didn't present himself as a towering businessman. He found her in a park, sitting on a worn bench, dressed simply, with no escort or security. Just a broken man, searching for answers. He sat down beside her, and after a silence filled with 1,000 emotions, he asked her the question on his mind. "What do you want, Hope? Money? A house?" She looked up, her gaze clear, and slowly shook her head. "Just listen. Let me try to talk to him." "Try talking to him?" he repeated, surprised. "Yes, sir. To talk to Emily, so she knows she's not alone, that her voice still matters, even if no one hears it." This simple exchange marked the beginning of an unexpected path, where hope and pain mingled in a fragile balance. A week later, in Richard Holloway's large, silent home, a door that hadn't been opened for months quietly creaked open. It was Emily's bedroom, a room frozen in time, like a sanctuary where memory refused to fade. The walls, painted a soft blue, still bore traces of children's drawings. Laughing suns, multicolored trees, shooting stars. The stuffed animals sat on the bed, carefully placed, as if the little girl would return at any moment. The clothes were neatly folded on the dresser, awaiting a return that would never come. Hope entered alone, her steps soft on the thick carpet. She didn't speak, made no noise. There was a kind of deep, almost sacred respect in her walk, as if she were entering a place that pain had sanctified. She sat on the edge of the bed, folded her hands in her lap, and closed her eyes. A heavy silence fell, almost palpable, hanging between the walls. Then, in a soft but clear voice, she began to speak. Not to Richard, who had remained discreetly in the corridor, but to Emily, to the child who was no longer there, but whose presence still filled every corner. She talked for hours, She spoke of what it was like to be cold when night fell on the dark streets, with no other refuge than a cardboard box or a subway bench. She described the icy fear of loneliness, the bite of the wind, and the hunger that gnaws at the stomach. She spoke of the immense pain of losing someone you love, of the mother who will never return. But she also spoke of hope, of the invisible hand of a loved one that holds hers, even when her body no longer feels it, of the fragile light that can shine in the deepest darkness, of the strength we sometimes find deep within ourselves when we think all is lost. In the haunting silence, Richard listened from the hallway. Every word seemed to come through the door and touch something inside him, something he hadn't known in a long time. Peace. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't a resurrection, but a soft, discreet light that came to rest on her broken heart. As if, through Hope's words, Emily had been able to say goodbye to her. In the days that followed, Richard offered Hope a place to live, not as a simple act of charity, but as an act of deep gratitude, born of mutual respect. Hope, despite her gratitude, politely declined Richard's offer of a prestigious private school. She had other dreams. She wanted to help children like her, those who, lost, broken, abandoned, could not find a voice. Richard listened to her wish and purchased a former orphanage on the outskirts of town. He had it completely renovated, adding cozy bedrooms, classrooms, play areas, and gardens. Hope gave a name to this place, the Voice of the Silent. The orphanage opened its doors to undocumented children, without families, without hope. Children whose lives seemed written in invisible ink, but who found refuge there, a light. Every night, Hope passed through the rooms, softly, like a living nightlight. She whispered in the ears of little ones like her. "You are alive. You have the right to exist. I'm listening to you." And in these words, often the simplest, resided a power capable of awakening sleeping souls. A year later, on Emily's birthday, the city's Central Park was transformed. This ordinary, often silent place now vibrated with a singular energy. More than 100 children, faces marked by pain, wandering, but also by newfound hope, had gathered under a clear sky, softly lit by the golden light of the setting sun. Around them were families, volunteers, curious neighbors, and of course, Richard Holloway, whose black suit contrasted with the children's simple attire. His eyes, usually hard and cold, were this time moist, shining with an emotion he no longer tried to hide. At the center of the gathering, Hope stood on a makeshift platform, holding an old, bound notebook covered in handwritten notes. She took a deep breath before beginning to read, her clear voice carried by the wind gently caressing the leaves of the trees. "To you, Emily, and to all those whom life has taken too soon," she began. She read a poem she had written, a vibrant tribute to love, to loss, and above all, to the living memory that unites the living and the absent. The words spoke of absence as an invisible bond, a light that never goes out, even in the darkest night. Then, at the end of her reading, she addressed Richard directly, repeating the phrase that had moved so many hearts. "Sir, may I wake your dead daughter?" A respectful silence followed, like a wave of calm passing through the crowd. Then Hope added, in a soft but determined voice, "Perhaps it is not death that needs to be awakened, but the life that we have forgotten." At that precise moment, each person held a light lantern made of thin paper. Each lantern had a word or name written on it, a memory, a message, a prayer for a loved one on the other side. At Hope's signal, the children raised their lanterns and gently released them into the sky. The lights floated, flickered, then rose high, high, until they disappeared into the starry immensity. Richard watched this silent ballet, his heart heavy, tears rolling gently down his cheeks. He understood then that, thanks to Hope, thanks to these children, he had awakened much more than a memory. He had awakened hope, life, love. In this sky illuminated by hundreds of small flames, he finally found a form of peace.